Hey guys, welcome back to an interesting video on Wild Rift. So today we're back with the patch 6.0 C rundown. Now this patch schedule has been pretty weird. Like we got 6.0 A, and then 1 week later we got 6.0 B, and then like I think it's 3 weeks later we're getting 6.0 C. So a little bit weird patch schedule for this one. Normally it's like every 2 weeks or so. But let's take a look at what's going on. So first up we have Gnar, the missing link, a new champion gonna be releasing tomorrow, and he is basically going to be a ranged top laner that can transform into a melee form. So it should be pretty interesting. Should take some time for people to kind of get good at him because he's not the easiest champion, having to manage your rage and things like that. So we'll see how it goes. So of course, when he's released, there will be a Gnar event where you can earn rewards. Together Under the Crescent is coming back again. If I recall, it's basically just pretty easy tasks you can do while just playing the game normally, and just getting some rewards. And then rotating game modes event is coming back again. Now personally, I kind of hate this event. It's pretty irritating because it kind of forces you to play whatever the rotating game mode is. But we have that again, and all random Earth as well as one for all is coming back again, presumably with the rotating game modes event. Actually, apparently all random Earth is not, but yeah. So let's get into the champion changes. So we got the most interesting change, which is the Corki rework. Now this is a pretty long explanation, but basically, to cut a long story short, is he is now going to be a full AD champion. He's not going to be an AD AP mix anymore, and also his package, the special delivery, is no longer going to be there anymore. So it's going to be a little bit similar to the PC rework that Corki got. So now let's go over what changed. So they are adjusting his base stats because he is getting a lot better scalings on his abilities. So his base AD is going down by 4, and the base AD per level is going down by 0.5. So his passive, instead of doing 20% physical and 80% damage, is now going to be 100% physical, but you'll deal extra 20% true damage. And the extra 20% true damage seems really strong of a passive to me, because just getting free true damage on your auto attacks for 20% of the damage seems like just really good. Right, so now the new package is after you hit enemy champion 6 times with the missile barrage, which is his ultimate, a package will drop right next to you, and you have to pick it up, and you can get 4 big ones, which is basically the empowered ultimate, which is going to be very useful for important team fights and like Elder Dragon and Baron and things like that, where you can basically launch 4 big ultimates at the same time. That sounds pretty strong. Next up, his Q, the bullet speed is increased. Basically, it's going to fall faster, a lot harder to dodge. Now, I've already seen what his abilities look like in the PvE, and the Q speed is pretty whack. It's pretty fast, and it's going to be really difficult to dodge. So the cooldown is, instead of being 7 seconds at all ranks, it's now the cooldown is now changing to 9876. So basically at the early ranks it's actually having a longer cooldown. I guess this is kind of to balance the fact that it's basically gonna hit almost every time, and the damage, the base damage is the same, but of course the scaling is now changed. Instead, it's now gonna scale off of more AD, and it also now has scales off of more AP. Although I highly doubt you'll be building Corki with AP anymore. I think you're gonna be building him AD. So next up, of course, we have the Valkyrie, the dash. Of course, the special delivery is removed. The cooldown is going down by a little bit at the start, but quite a number of seconds at the end. So 16 to 12 is a pretty good buff here. The mana consumption went from 100 at all ranks to now 80 at the first rank, and then it's scaling up to 95 at the later rank. And this is good because normally you max Valkyrie last, and the mana consumption is really high whenever you dash. So having the mana consumption be lower at the lower ranks is going to be quite useful. And the damage remains the same, but the scaling, of course, it now scales with bonus AD, and the AP scaling is increased as well. But the trail burning time, it goes down from 3 seconds to 2.5. I think this is irrelevant because you never really use your W for the damage anyway. It's mainly for the mobility. Now Gatling gun changes from magic damage to physical damage, and instead of shredding MR, it now shreds both armor and MR. And the cooldown is going to 12 seconds at all ranks from 14 seconds. Mana consumption is now going to be scaled up, and the damage is a little bit lower actually, but damage is a little bit lower. That's basically it. So for the ulti, now it does physical damage instead of magic damage. Yes, you now can only store 4 stacks instead of 6. And but when you basic attack champions, it will reduce the cooldown of the time it takes to charge a stack. And the missile preparation time, which is the time it takes to stack one instance of the ultimate, is changed from 10/9/8 seconds to 20 seconds at all ranks. Now this is a very long cooldown for the ultimate, right? Because it used to be like 10 seconds and now it's like 20 seconds. So what are they doing to the ultimate? Well, basically you can see the normal missile damage is it's going down a little bit at the early rank, but in the later ranks it is a lot higher, and the scaling is now 70% bonus AD. Scaling, changing the scaling from 25, 50, 75 AD. So I'm not sure if this is going to lead to more or less damage. It's going to do some kind of math on that, but we'll have to see when we actually play him. And the empowered missile, which is the big one, similar treatment, a little bit less, actually a little bit less damage at all ranks, but 140% bonus AD. So these are all just numbers. We're gonna have to see when he actually arrives, what is going to be the best way to play him. I still feel that build is probably still going to be Man Immune Triforce into other things, probably no longer with Riftmaker, but of course we'll have to do a guide for him as well as an updated basic guide, and we'll of course check out what is the best way to go about playing him. So Kindred is getting a small buff. The attack speed boost on the Q is now 5% stacks of marks instead of 3%, so it's a very minor buff. And the mounting dread, which is the E, the base damage is going up by 10, and the bonus AD is going up by 10% as well. So that's a pretty decent buff, considering the burst on her E is, it's pretty big, especially on lower health targets. So decent buff to Kindred. Kindred has not been doing well, of course, ever since she got a couple of rounds of nerfs from being too OP in the jungle. She basically has not really been played anymore. Gwen getting a bit of a buff as well. Mana consumption on Q going down by 5, not gonna matter too much. The Mist gives her resistances, and the resistances are going to be increased by 4 at all ranks. So a little bit extra resistances from Gwen. And the ulti slowing effect is going up by 5% at all ranks. I would say out of all of the buffs, probably the ulti buff is the most significant, because getting extra 5% slow is of course going to be the most impactful compared to 4 resistances or 5 less mana consumption. Renekton also getting a buff. So far it's just buffs. No one has gone nerfed. So we have Renekton buff. The health regen on hit on his Q is going up at all ranks by quite a decent amount, especially in the later ranks. The interesting thing about this one is that at one point Renekton used to be very strong, and then they nerfed him quite a number of times, and then he now is just okay, and now they're buffing him back up again. So we'll see if he now becomes, really strong again. And meanwhile, his Ruthless Predator, that's the W, I believe, the base damage is going up slightly by 5, and the empowered one is also going up by 5, so a little bit more damage for Renekton. Now Rakan also getting a buff. Cooldown of his Q is going down by 2 seconds at all ranks, which is a pretty sweet buff. Also, something else that they're changing is now the base healing is increased from 15 to 30, but instead of champion level times 7, you now get champion level times 6. Overall, this is going to be a buff, because overall this is definitely going to lead to more healing in the earlier stages of the game, so that is more sustained. The Grand Entrance, the W cooldown is getting reduced just slightly at all ranks. Now this is a very delicate balancing act, because normally when they nerf Rakan, they always nerf his W cooldown, because that is of course his main engage. So basically when he's weak they buff it, and when he's strong they nerf it. So they nerfed it I think twice already, and now he's not too strong, so they're buffing it back up again, which is essentially just reverting their nerf. But this should definitely make Rakan a little bit better. And this is the most weird change in my opinion. The Battle Dance, his E, the cast range is going from 600 to 700. Now I always mention how like cast ranges of abilities, or like ranges of spells like the Fiora Q or like the Leona E, is always going to be the most significant changes, because range always affects whether you can get the ability off or not, right? And Furthermore, it's also about like the feeling when you play. Like you kind of know intuitively what's the distance you need, and changing that means that people who are very used to playing the champion will basically have to kind of almost slightly relearn the champion in terms of ranges. But of course, at the end of the day, this is a good buff, right? Because like he can cast E from a further distance, which means, of course, that he will always be safer. So there's that. So someone else who's getting a buff is Vex. Like so far, it's just exclusively buffs. I don't think they actually nerf anybody in this patch, but the base damage of Vex's Q is getting buffed by 10 damage in all ranks, and the ulti cooldown is getting reduced by 10 seconds at all ranks. Now, I haven't really seen very much of Vex. I guess she is just kind of alright, middle of the pack, mid laner at the moment, really good counter pick against champions with mobility. But of course, her bread and butter getting buffed by 10 damage is really significant. This is a pretty big buff. And of course, the ulti cooldown going down by 10 is also going to be useful. Swain also getting a buff, health per level going up by 8. Death's Hand, which is his Q, damage of the first bolt is going up by quite a fair amount in the later ranks, but at the base rank not much. So it's the 5, 10, 15 buff again, which is the ability you max first, so this does of course matter. And the ulti regen per second is going up by 5. Now I would say that out of all the buffs, the ulti regen probably is the most significant because it's per second, so this is actually an extra 5 regen every second you're in the ulti, and you could be in the ulti for quite a long time. So a really decent buff for Swain. Roa is also getting buffed in the sense that you are going to be getting 1 stack every 35 seconds instead of 40 seconds, so you scale faster. Not many people actually build Roa though. It's mainly only Kassadin, I think, actually builds this item, but no one else really builds it, so I guess it's an indirect Kassadin buff. Now, Sudden Impact is getting a very interesting change, right? So basically, if you take a look at here, it's still 10 to 80, growth cap by level 15, but now it's growth cap by level 10. So what this means is you will reach this 80 damage by level 10 instead of previously we reached 80 damage at level 15. So essentially, if you kind of do the math on how much it increases per level, the increase is going to be much greater. Even so, Sudden Impact is going to be a bit better by this, but even so, I don't think that Sudden Impact is a very good rune anymore because the lethality and the magic pen you used to get is so much better than the true damage we're getting now. This extra true damage is not really that important. So next up, Enchanted Ensemble, a little bit too tanky apparently. So what they're doing is basically they are reducing the health of both of the Enchanted Ensemble, the mini that basically apparently the Enchanted Ensemble splits into the Enchanted Trumpet, Organ, and Drum. So basically for the 3 components, they're reducing the health while increasing the AD. Yeah, that's pretty much the change. So this should make it easier to kill, but it will do more damage. So I think that's pretty balanced. I do think that, and especially if you put a 5-minute Enchanted Ensemble down and they break up into the Trumpet, Organ, and Drum, it is pretty hard to kill them if you're alone. So I think that this is a pretty good change where they make it a little bit more squishy but do a little bit more damage. I think that's fair. So skins that are going to come out are Super Galaxy Gnar and Dragonblade Riven. Once again, there are no nerfs this patch, which is really strange. But yeah, that's it for the rundown. Thank you guys so much for watching the video, and goodbye.